Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Spanish Football Podcast. I'm Phil Kitromilides, joined as ever by Sid Lowe. Hello, Sydney.
Good morning, Philip. How are you?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you.
Are you excited?
About doing a pod or just in general?
About something that's very, very special that's going to happen tomorrow.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, as if we hadn't been counting down the days, the hours, the minutes, and the seconds to what is taking place tomorrow. Dear listeners of the podcast, after 5,000 hours of podcasting together, 500 shows on TV, and 13 years of working together, Sid Lowe and I are going to commentate a La Liga match together tomorrow night. I'm excited. Sydney less so, but that's fine. He's a busy man.
It's the game, the moment the world has been waiting for.
I mean, you say that as a joke, but I think it is sort of the moment that the Spanish football world has been waiting for. You and me on the call for Levante against Real Madrid tomorrow night in Matchday 6. But before we get ahead of ourselves, Sid, I'm just so excited I had to start the podcast talking about that.
Fair enough.
Let's reflect on Matchday 5, shall we? Which came to a close last night. These are the results then. On Friday night, Real Betis beat Real Sociedad 3-1 at La Cartuja. Real Sociedad's really disappointing start to the season continues. Talking of disappointing starts to seasons, Girona were thrashed 4-0 at home by Levante. Girona reduced to 9 men in this game as well. They are in all sorts of problems. For more on this, read Sid Lowe's column on them on the Guardian website, which should be out this afternoon. Monday afternoon. Real Madrid beat Espanyol 2-0 at the Bernabeu. Sevilla beat Alaves 2-1 at the Estadio Mendizorroza. Alexis Sanchez. Yes, him scoring the winner for Sevilla. Villarreal beating Osasuna 2-1. A valiant effort by Osasuna. They played with 10 men for nearly an hour. They took the lead as well, but a comeback from Villarreal giving them all 3 points. And Valencia beat Athletic Club 2-0 at Mestalla. Athletic absolutely dominating the first half, not being able to take any of their chances or create any really good openings, despite Valencia being bloody awful. Second half, though, things changed. Valencia were better. Athletic got a man sent off, and Valencia ended up winning 2-0. Sunday saw Celta Vigo draw 1-1 for the 5th successive game. I don't know if that's ever happened before, Sid. Cleverer people than me probably keep records of this, but to have the same result in a fixture 5 weeks in a row is pretty incredible. Rayo won, Celta won at Vallecas. It was also 1-1 between Mallorca and Atleti. The problems continue for Atleti at the start of this season. The problems continue for Oviedo at the start of this season as well. They lost 1-0 at Elche, and Barcelona beat Getafe 3-0 at the Estadio Johan Cruyff. If you're enjoying the Monday podcast, why not join us over at patreon.com/TSFP. Patrons get the Monday and Friday pods with no adverts. Plus, they get the Q&A pod and the bonus pod. And there's the newsletter, the TSFP diary, the Discord, the WhatsApp community. You can join us from just €4.75 a month. We were at a few games this weekend. So let's start by talking about one that you were at, Sid, at the Bernabeu. Real Madrid beating Espanyol by 2-0. Both goals being terrific shots from distance. Eder Militao scoring an absolute worldie from miles out, and Kylian Mbappe with a beautiful shot later on in the game as well. I wonder, Sid, do you think that this has been a sort of specific tactic that Xabi Alonso has told, particularly his centre-backs, to shoot from distance? Because we've seen Eder Militao, we've seen Dean Howson trying their luck from distance before, and it worked out beautifully for Militao this weekend.
I think I probably wouldn't go so far as to call it a tactic, but I do think it's an instruction, in the sense that, if it opens up for you, yes, take it on. Post game, Xabi Alonso said that at times that's a worthwhile option, particularly against teams that sit very deep, because of course finding a way through them isn't easy. And it paid off. I mean, you still don't expect that from Militao, who takes a couple of touches to move himself into a slightly right of centre position and hits it so cleanly. 30.5 meters, traveling at over 100 kilometers an hour. And into the net, and that did kind of find a way through for a Real Madrid team that was struggling to. My kind of overall judgment on this game was that I'm starting to wonder if this year Real Madrid might be boringly good. in the sense that they might kind of control games, be fundamentally better than the other side. Eventually, they will always find a way through because of the quality of the players, because the structure is good and so on. But it's not going to be as much fun because, of course, part of the fun was the madness of it, sort of how open it was, how wild it was, how quite often they would allow space at one end, but then they go for you at the other, that the game got very, very stretched. This is a very, very much more compact team now. And they're playing higher up the pitch, they're winning the ball higher up, but the whole thing is squeezed. And I actually think in that sense, Real Madrid might be, in some ways, a victim of their own success. I think the structural success is part of what's meaning they're having less space to actually be creative, less space to make chances. Now, it's very, very early to say this. We're only 5 games into the season. Frankly, they haven't played the best teams yet. They haven't played against sides who would really give us a test of that. But I think we are seeing a structure emerging, and I think it's a structure which means that they are far less likely to be caught out than previously. But I think they are maybe going to be not quite as exciting. But of course, the excitingness comes as a neutral in the sense that the excitingness is partly the jeopardy, the possibility that they get caught out.
Excitement.
What did I call it? Excitingness. It's a good word, that, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And they've only conceded 2 goals in those 5 games as well. So yeah. The solidity being shown, that despite having what would be in many games their first choice back 4 unavailable for this game with Trent, Rudiger, Howson, and Ferland Mendy. I mean, I'm pushing it here because I think at least the 2 of those are.
Yeah, Trent and Mendy, we probably are not first choice,
And Rudiger as well, maybe.
Yes, I think you're probably right, actually. Yeah.
But there we go. Anyway, they had some players missing, but still. I was waiting for the Thibaut Courtois save, which seems to happen every single game, but it didn't happen in this one. He had a relatively comfortable afternoon. We'll speak about Espanyol in just a second. We'll also speak about the polemic, because there is always polemic for us to discuss. We don't always do it, but it's always there. Well, it's always there. It's whether we choose or not to discuss.
I'm just trying to think what was remotely polemical about.
Oh no. I mean, not necessarily about the referee or anything, but Vinny Jr. and him.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was trying to think. I can't think of a single bad refereeing decision except possibly not giving Dolan a card for kicking. Who was it he kicked?
Oh yes.
Can't remember who it was now.
Yes, in the first half. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about Vinny Jr. now then. Sid, as we've brought it up.
You've opened that can of worms.
I've opened it.
Little wriggly bastards are all over the place now.
Yes, I'm trying to brush them off. He started the game. He had a shot that hit the post in the second half. He had a run at the end of the first half where he was kind of through on goal. And I think if it was last year, we would have seen him drive towards goal and take a shot on. Instead, he was a little bit wide and then played a bobbling pass to Kylian Mbappe, who missed the opportunity. And that was it from Vinny Jr. in the game. He was taken off. He wasn't very happy. And this seems to be rumbling on, Sid.
Yes, it is. I suppose there's a question now as we discuss this as to how much you want to expand this into broader questions, like, for example, the fact that he hasn't renewed his contract yet, like the kind of the broader sense of the club's feel for where he's at in his career and what
you expand it as much as you want.
Okay, well, I mean, let's start with the basics. The basics are that Xabi Alonso has started him as a sub twice this season, which is pretty unusual. That said, his contribution is still pretty good. I think it's 2 goals and 2 assists. 2 games that he started as a sub, he came on and made a difference, both in Marseille and in Oviedo, where he came on and made a difference in both of those. I think the nature, let's go back to what I was saying about this Real Madrid team being kind of less interesting because they're better, if you see what I mean, less interesting because they're better structured and so on. I think one of the people who is hurt by that a little bit is Vinícius, because he's a player that likes the space to run into, likes the game to be a little bit more open. And I think the fact that he's denied some of that space is slightly problematic. I will be honest here. I thought there was a chance that lack of space might be problematic for Mbappe as well, because I think Mbappe also likes to go into space. And actually, he's been very, very good so far this season. And Vinícius' place isn't quite right. But I think with Vinícius, you look at it and it feels like an emotional thing as much as anything else, and kind of the sense of his own importance. I think we probably shouldn't get too hung up on his kind of exteriorization, if that's a real word, externalization, I suppose, of how he feels, because of course Vinícius has always been like that. And Alonso said something quite interesting off the back of the Champions League game. He said, I decided not to speak to him Thought it wasn't the moment. Let it pass. And then I spoke to him the next day, and he said we had a little bit of a chat, not very long, but we had a bit of a chat, and he was in a better mindset, and we did some training together, some individualized training, and it was better.
Wasn't it quite pointed that Xabi Alonso said that in the press conference and told everybody about that? Yeah. Like, he didn't need to say that.
No, he didn't need to say that. And I think, I don't know if that was necessarily that he said it because he was trying to send a message, or he just kind of said it and maybe could have not done. I don't know if it was a deliberate, right, I'm going to throw this out there. But
he didn't need to tell everyone he was so angry the day after that I thought it was best not to talk to him. I let him cool down. You know, he didn't need to say that.
He didn't need to. He didn't need to. I suppose in part what you're saying is, you know, this is a guy that's not happy with the situation. You don't mind people knowing that. I suppose it's a way of saying, don't worry, I know how to manage this. And there are times to let it go and times to deal with it. There was a moment, there's a bit of footage in this game where it's during the cooling break, I think, the second cooling break, and he has a word with Vinícius, and I think he tells him, I'm about to take you off. Yeah. And Vinícius kind of walks away from him, and he goes towards him, and he just kind of sort of keeps pretending he can't hear him, sort of thing. And there's a little bit of that. But look, I think it's interesting as well, and we talked about this a little the other day, that Vinícius has a challenger for his position now, even with Mbappe having become the centre forward. And I think we thought that it was about Vinícius and Mbappe and how do you fit the two of them. It's now about Vinícius and Rodrigo and how you fit the two of them. And we come back to that stylistic thing. If there's less space and it's tighter, maybe Xabi Alonso feels that Rodrigo is a better fit for that. And maybe a better fit in terms of some of the kind of structural defensive work, the dropping back in, the taking up the right positions and so on. I feel a little bit like we've gone down the polemica route in that it's only 5 weeks in, and there's a bit of me that thinks this won't end. Now let's do the expansion bit, which is why I don't think that. In the summer, and I think we probably mentioned this at the time, there was I think it was a radio kind of breaking news radio thing, which was Vinícius and Real Madrid have decided to put contract negotiations on until the end of the season. There's no problem. It's all okay and it's fine, but they put it off to the end of the season. Now, if you put it off the end of the season, I'm sorry, I don't buy that there's no problem. You do not allow a player with a year and a half left on his contract to get into the last year.
Especially that kind of player.
That kind of player. It changes the dynamics of those contract negotiations enormously. No one voluntarily puts off contract negotiations with a player that important for a year. As we said at the time, they're in different places in terms of what they want the wages to be. Possibly not quite as dramatically different as they had been a month or so before that, in that there had been a little bit of coming together. And it's interesting this because it depends on which interpretation you take. There was a suggestion that this is Real Madrid saying, well, we're not going to do it now because we're in control and it doesn't matter. I think this is in terms of the business side of it, is the complete opposite. The player is a person in the strongest position if you let a contract get that late. And then the argument can become, yeah, but then the club can just sell him to someone. Not if the player says he doesn't want to go. No. And Real Madrid, who have been beneficiaries as a conscious policy recently of getting players in their contract, encouraging players not to renew with clubs, they know these mechanics better than anyone else.
Watch this space, because it is something that I'm sure we'll be talking about continuously between now and the end of the season. We've kind of gone over time.
Yeah, apologies for that, because I must admit, I was looking at this weekend's games, and I'll be honest with you, I thought, there's nothing to say about Real Madrid. It was just like, there you go, functional 2-0, move on to the next thing. Unfortunately, we haven't moved on. Apologies, listeners. Let's move on to something more fun, shall we?
Yes. I mean, there was stuff that we could have talked about in this game, but we don't really have time for now. Jude Bellingham coming back almost a month earlier from his shoulder surgery. The emergence of Franco Mastantuono as well, and how he's just completely slotted into this team, looks absolutely like he's been there for years. And also Espanyol, who had their best start to a season for 30 years, but didn't really do too much in this match. We'll do a Q&A podcast tomorrow for patrons. If you want to ask us about those topics or anything else, send the questions in and we will answer them.
This episode of TSFP is brought to you by our friends at NordVPN.
Now, you guys know we travel a lot covering Spanish football, whether it's following Spanish teams around Europe in the Champions League,
or trying to do 3 games in a single weekend.
The best way to make sure you've got access to all your content from back home is using NordVPN.
Yeah, we used that ourselves over the summer at the Club World Cup.
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't, but you guys did because I was here and I didn't need to. But whether it's keeping up with the football, TV shows, or movies, NordVPN lets you access your subscriptions back home wherever you are.
And it's really easy to use, which is not a bad thing, Phil, because if you're tech savvy like some of us, you kind of need that.
Yeah, well, speak for yourself, Sid. It also improves your internet security, which is important if you spend a lot of time using public Wi-Fi, let's say at train stations, airports, hotel lobbies.
You mean the places where I am 90% of the time?
Exactly. You connect with just one click. It's one of the fastest VPNs around, and you can use up to 10 devices with one account. For more information, and this is really important, you need to head to nordvpn.com/TSFP.
And there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, and you also get an extra 4 months for free. What was the link again, Phil?
You can find it in the show notes. It is nordvpn.com/TSFP. So Barcelona playing their second consecutive home game at the Estadi Johan Cruyff. Last week, they thrashed Valencia 6-0. Last night, they beat Getafe 3-0 in the pouring rain. Sid, you were very disappointed that they didn't manage to fill their training complex ground.
Yeah, I was, to be honest with you, because I thought to myself, 6,000, come on, you can do 6,000. I'm going to slightly back away from that initial disappointment. Because you said to me, pouring rain, I wouldn't go either. And B, actually, because a colleague of mine said, look, the official attendance was 5,700. And so it's only 300. Sorry? 5,711, yeah. So it's only 300 short, and actually that's not that terrible. So maybe it just looked a little bit worse because it was the seats near the front and so on. I didn't go. I wish I had. I really should have done. It looks like they're going to play there again, by the way. And allow me to go on a little rant here.
Oh,
they're going to play there again against Real Sociedad. And the reason is that it's the Merthe fireworks and music spectacle on Montjuic, which is the reason why La Liga, with 9 games to go, changed that kickoff time from 9 o'clock to 6:30. And as a result, which is what they always do when they change the kickoff time of the game that was at 6:30. So in other words, they messed around 4 sets of fans because of a potential problem fitting them in Montjuic with these celebrations in Barcelona. And now the game's not even being played in Montjuic because local authorities in Barcelona said, no, even if you change the time, we're not doing this.
Well, switch it back then.
I think it's appalling. And I genuinely think, and lots of people will say, oh, well, it's for this reason and that reason, and it was asked for by the local government. Fine. Okay, fine. I'm not having any of it. There is not an excuse for this. There is maybe an excuse for changing that game. There is not an excuse. There's a reason, which isn't the same as an excuse, not a justified one, for changing 4 sets of fans' kickoff times to do that. It's not on.
I don't think anything makes you more angry than this, Sid. Certainly not that.
Because I think it's the absolute epitome of a total disrespect for fans, which I think is a recurring theme, and I think is a problem. Anyway,
Barcelona.
Rant's over.
That's okay. As we said, that's what this podcast is there for. We get stuff off our chest and we can rant about whatever we want, Sid. Barcelona beating Getafe 3-0. Another 2 goals from Ferran Torres, who has started every game for Barcelona. He is absolutely flying in terms of goals that he scored, and he looks like being first choice in the central forward position. He played alongside Robert Lewandowski in this game. Marcus Rashford was apparently due to start this game, but he was left on the bench for arriving late to the activation session, something that Rafinha did last week, something that happened last season with several squad players, and Hansi Flick showing that he is not afraid to bench people if they turn up late to the activation session. So don't do it, Barcelona players. Ferran, though, 2 more goals, really confidently taken strikes as well. The first one is a beautiful team move. The second one is an excellent finish from him as well. I didn't see this coming, Sid. I honestly didn't see this coming. I feel like I've said this before on the podcast, but his evolution into the kind of player that he has become is really quite impressive.
Yeah, I think there is a part of us that maybe should have seen some of it coming, because actually his goal scoring record, certainly with the Spanish national team, has always been really good. I remember talking to him at the Euros and suggesting something, and bear with me while I say something really stupid and then try and explain why it's not quite as stupid as it still seems, as it appears at first glance. And that is that he is kind of a David Villa figure. Now, the reason why I say that, which sounds incredibly stupid, because Villa's goal scoring record of the Spanish national team is phenomenal. Of course, he's a top scorer of all time. He's one of the great Spanish strikers that there has been. Is I think some of the movements that he does are similar to Villa. I think that ability to be sort of the wide player and come into the middle from that wide position, although with Barcelona, he's more often starting actually right in the middle. But that ability to time the runs, to know when to arrive, it's not really about some of the things that are obvious kind of tick list qualities of a forward. It's the intuition, it's the understanding, it's then normally the cleanness of the finish. Although actually Varane, I think some fans find him frustrating because he'll miss chances as well. And so I think that's part of it. And he's really, really important to them. And he's really important to them as in part because of course we don't know what the season-long contribution from Lewandowski is going to be. And we suspect, maybe unfairly, maybe because we're too busy focusing on his date of birth, we suspect that it won't be consistent. And also, actually, if you look at Lewandowski's, and I don't have the stats in front of me, and so I'm more than prepared to be shot down over this, but I think I'd be right in saying you look at Lewandowski's last 2 seasons at the club, and he scored lots and lots of goals until Christmas, and then there's been a tail off in the second part of the season. I think last year it picked up again at the back end of the season, if I remember rightly. I'm not entirely sure, but there's definitely been a kind of Christmassy tail off. And so Varane's really important from that point of view. I think the mindset thing is part of it. I do think there's a risk of us talking too much about his mindset because he offered up this idea that I'm called the shark now. And I think what happens sometimes is when someone gives you something to hang on to, you run with it. Yes. And actually, rather than running with it because of what you're seeing, you run with it because someone's told you it's the case. And so it becomes a bit easy to buy into it, if you see what I mean. It becomes self-fulfilling almost.
I enjoyed one of the headlines in the Catalan papers making reference to just how much rain had fallen in the stadium. And it said, the shark moves well in water.
Very good.
El tiburón, Ferran. 2 more goals for him. I enjoyed Sid also. I wasn't actually aware of this until one of my English colleagues told me about it. The fact that a lot of the English-speaking world seemed to discover Pedri on Thursday night in the Champions League against Newcastle and just how good he was, apparently. Jack Grealish tweeted about how good he was, and Paul Scholes as well, my new favourite player. He's been doing this for a while, and he's been quite good for a while, Sid, and he remains quite good.
I'm going to slightly defend Jack Grealish and Paul Scholes and other people who appear to defend him, which is to discover him rather, which is to say that they're under no obligation to watch Barcelona every week. I think it's natural in a way that they see him. And for example, if someone in the Newcastle team had been absolutely brilliant against Barcelona, to be honest, I would probably be discovering him. That's true. Now, also,
Sid, what are you doing? We're trying to sell Spanish football across the world. We need to tell people that they have to be watching Barcelona.
They should be watching this. Yes. And it is Barcelona and it is Pedri. And by the way, Pedri's been at 2 Euros in a World Cup, I think. That's right, isn't it? Yes. And he was absolutely brilliant in the first of those 2 Euros and the Olympics and so on. Also, the other thing I suppose I would say is just because Jack Grealish and Paul Scholes are saying he's great, doesn't necessarily mean they haven't seen him before. Like every time I say Pedri's great, it doesn't mean I'm discovering him. Except I suppose you can find a million tweets from me. The difference is you can find a million tweets from me previously also saying it. You know what I do think? And actually this goes back this goes back a little bit to what I was saying a moment ago about the if you like having a discussion point to hang things on or a phrase to hang things on like the shark thing. I think it possibly is true. And I'm talking about myself now, but it's probably applicable to other journalists as well, that Pedri hasn't been written about as much as he might be by me, because there isn't a sort of, if you like, a hook or a nice storyline around him. He's just really good at doing this every single week. And possibly there is a risk of overlooking him a little bit because there isn't as I say, like a kind of a thing to hang it on, a theme or a hook or a comedy moment or a brilliant backstory or something like that.
Just being good at football isn't enough,
Sometimes it's not enough.
Pedri very strong in this game again. An excellent start to the season from him. There were comments from Ferran Torres after the game about Getafe, saying no proponen nada y hacen demasiadas faltas. They don't propose anything. They don't really play any football, and they make too many fouls. I mean, Getafe gone Getafe, Ferran. You know how it is.
And Bordalas' response to this was, well, the real difference is a billion euros. And
Yeah,
actually, they're
well,
sort of both
that's
right. They are
no,
sort
he's
of
not
both
right
right.
because a lot of other teams who have
No,
a
oh no,
billion euros
that
less
part's true.
do
Yeah,
not play like that.
yeah.
The mighty Rayo Vallecano went toe to toe with Barcelona, playing a very different style, and they have
And
considerably less than €1 billion less. Yeah,
and importantly, Rayo Vallecano went toe to toe with them and very nearly got did get a better result and very nearly got a very much better result.
yes,
And deserved a much better result. So it's not necessarily that said, as you say, Getafe going to Getafe. Getafe are very good at what they do. They don't only do that, but it is true. I think I said this last week, but allow me to say it now in case I didn't. Watching Getafe against Real Oviedo was quite useful to me, I think, because I've watched Getafe for years. I've watched them possibly as much as just about anyone,
yes,
and admired what they do in some ways. At times found it funny, this kind of approach from them. And actually, it was quite interesting watching them for the first time with skin in the game, if you see what I mean, with caring about who won, because you then start to get maybe a bit more of appreciation of how frustrating it must be for the players playing against them. And there was a bit of footage from yesterday where Robert Lewandowski runs across the back line and a Getafe player pushes him. I can't remember which one. And then another one does. The second one is Apcar. I can't remember who the first one is. And they both push him over and nothing happens. And you think, you know what? It's not surprising that players occasionally give some back. Last week, Fede Vinícius, the Oviedo centre forward, got sent off because after 90 minutes of this, although he wasn't on the pitch for the whole game, kind of, it's quite easy to lose it.
Rafinha got taken off at half-time. He was losing it. He'd already been booked as well. So, and also Marcus Rashford was coming on too. Let's move on and talk about Atletico Madrid. Oh dear, more points dropped for them. Away from home as well, if you look at their results on the road in 2025, just 3 wins from 13 away games. They've dropped points at some pretty lowly stadia, and again against a really struggling Mallorca side. Made a terrible start to the season. They were unable to beat them. A really poor day at the office for Atletico Madrid because Julian Alvarez missed a penalty and Alex Sorloth managed to get himself sent off as well. We thought that they were going to salvage a victory with Conor Gallagher scoring late on, but Vedat Muriqi scored even later on to make it 1-1. Julian apparently not happy with being subbed. The cameras caught him saying, siempre a mí, he always takes me off. I guess we've spoken about this with Vinny Jr as well and other players. Nobody's happy when they're taken off. But is there anything we need to read into that, Sid, or shall we just go straight to the football and analyse what happened with?
No, we should read into it. We read into it the sense of frustration from Julian himself, and as you say, all players feel like that. But we've just had some of this discussion around Vinícius. Let's have it with Julian. It's different in that Simeone is very clear that Julian is his best forward, and he said post game he's our best player. He's our best player. That we've got to protect him and we've got to take the minutes off him when we can. The question mark, of course, is whether this was a moment where you could really, and also the emotional impact of that. I think it does tell you something about Simeone's. Okay, so this was put to me by the how do I put this? By the camp of one of the Atletico players. This idea that there's a feeling that sometimes he's not very empathetic. That some players feel like that some of the things that he's done, what Spanish refer to as a left hand, the gentle touch or a kind of an easing of processes. Simeone doesn't do it, and at times he could do with doing it. So I think that's part of that. I also think it tells you something about Simeone being still a little bit unsure about what he wants his forward line to look like. And he said, I put Sorloth on because I wanted to approach it a different way, which of course didn't last because Sorloth got sent off. For what it's worth, we could be here all day, so I don't really want to. I have a problem with those kind of red cards, that kind of challenge being a red card every time in Spain, because I think sometimes what happens is the study's up, but actually the contact is provoked by the other player swinging through. And I think it always gets given one way. And I actually think that the provocation of the contact isn't always one way. And also the other thing, of course, is about slowing down and freeze framing it, and it looks a bit worse than it really is. But anyway, that's another issue possibly for another day. And Atletico Madrid, the most worrying thing for Atletico Madrid.
Well, they're 9 points behind the leaders after 5 games.
Obviously, sorry. That's the baseline. That's the fundamental. The most worrying thing I would say from Atletico Madrid is that in all of the games in which they've dropped points, they've led.
Yes.
And this is a team that, in theory, should be able to protect themselves from that. I was looking at stats, Phil. Correct me if I'm wrong, because you usually have the stats to hand. They've basically let in half of the shots they've faced.
Oh, I mean, if you tell me, Sid, I can check this before.
I think it's faced 18 shots, let in 9, or no, sorry, faced 19 shots, let in 8. So it's just short of half.
Wow, that is a very surprising and worrying stat from Atletico Madrid. Of course, not as worrying as being 9 points behind Real Madrid, and we do have the Madrid derby next weekend, next Saturday. It's the 4:15 kickoff. So if they lose that, they're 12 points behind Real Madrid. There is a midweek round of fixtures as well. Real Madrid going to Levante and Atletico Madrid hosting Rayo. But assuming they both win that, they go into that game. It's kind of similar to last.
The title race is done.
Well, Atletico Madrid are out of it.
Yes. Sorry, yes, not done. It's done for Atletico. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are sort of shades of last season where they were 10 points behind at one point, and then they went on a run where they won 16 games in all competitions consecutively, 8 in the league. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen. I mean,
here's a broader question for you as well. Simeone was talking about, there's been lots of changes. We've got new players in. We need to find the structure. It can sometimes take a while. I don't really think that's the explanation for what's happening. But that does invite a reflection, doesn't it? Which is that if you think that the problem is that you're bringing new players in and that takes a while, I'm going to say the most basic thing ever, and everyone will turn around and point at me and laugh here, but let's do it, shall we? Don't bring in new players then. How about have a bit more stability for your squad? Are you telling me your squad was so bad that you needed to make this many changes? Because I don't buy that.
I think I heard that there were 15 players of the squad weren't there 2 years ago. Yeah. So either last summer or this summer, there's 15 players that are basically still new, that have been there for a year or less. So the turnover has been huge. And
I don't think that's a good thing. I certainly don't think it's a good thing if you then use it as your explanation as to why it's not working. And you can say, well, that's fine because with time it'll be good. Okay, but you haven't got time.
How much time? Yeah.
If with time it'll be good. Okay, so let's say for argument's sake, you start playing now. So it's okay to start a season giving away 9 points. Now I know it's not as simple as that, but it's exaggerating the point to make a basic point, which is, well, if the turnover is great. Is great as in large rather than as in brilliant. If turnover is large, then that's in itself a problem.
It is. All right. We're going to be talking about Atletico Madrid, I feel, for most podcasts this season.
Or perhaps we're not. Perhaps they're going to drift into irrelevance because if they lose the derby to Real Madrid, do we then think, well, they're not a competitor. They're not actually that relevant anymore. Is that a risk for them?
Yeah, that is a risk. Before we go, just a quick word on Rayo 1, Celta 1, just because we were both at the game. I think Rayo possibly did enough to get something more out of this fixture. I was struck by the panda, though, Sid, Borja Iglesias for Celta Vigo, who scored a very untidy goal, but he's been scoring this season and important goals for Celta as well, without which they would have 3 fewer points. So he's been very, very important for Celta. He's just, when you see him in the flesh as well, he's an absolute unit, and he's an absolute bastard as well to play against. I mean, he's putting himself around, he's throwing himself. He's a lovely guy. We love the panda. We love the social values that he stands for, and he seems like a kind, empathetic, warm person, someone I would like to spend time with. I wouldn't want to play against him. He's absolutely horrible.
Right, so here we go. I completely agree with you. And the reason why I was smiling when you brought up Borja wasn't about the goal. It was precisely about this. It was about the fight with the centre-backs. And here's the thing. I'm going to take what you just said and flip it on its head.
Okay.
Which is to say that you say he's an absolute bastard to play against. You wouldn't want to play against him. I feel like you wouldn't want to be him either. Because the centre-forward who is buffeting up against the central defenders is also the centre-forward who's spending the whole game getting kicked from behind by the central defenders, having them going into his back, having them knocking him over. And in part, you see moments where it feels like he's enjoying that. I remember there's one a few years ago when he played against Militao and he finished the game and his post-match interview was like, me and Militao had a right ding-dong, but it was really, it was really honourable and it was really fun. It was really clean. And we just kind of had a fight because that's what we do. And I think sometimes he enjoys it. In this game, it was noticeable to me. And I had him directly in front of me in the second half. And it was really quite fun watching him and particularly Lejeune, but not only those two go at each other. But there's a few moments when actually Borja kind of was opening his arms wide and having go at the fourth official and saying, come on. And I actually felt that he got pushed about quite a bit, but he's a big guy and he takes it really well. And so I asked Claudio Giraldez about this post-game because it struck me so much. And I said, look, obviously we talk about him as a physical player, as someone who's taking the hits and he can hold the hits and stuff. But it's part of this. And I was thinking, I admit this, we go back to the Getafe talk. I was thinking a little bit about Fede Vinícius last week, falling into the trap. I said, there's a little bit of this actually a kind of a psychological game. You know, you're this centre forward who's getting hit all game long, and hitting, to be fair, it is both ways. Part of it is the kind of the mental aptitude to not get wound up and not put yourself in the trap of getting a red card. And then what I loved about it was at the end, he was exhausted and he was on his knees, and then he went and embraced everybody in the Rayo team, including Les Joueurs. And at that point I thought, it must take a kind of a really interesting mindset to go into war and sort of never get too wound up about it.
Yeah.
It must be quite hard not to lamp someone at times.
It's true. It's true. There was a right old tussle between him and Lejeune, and honours were even with another 1-1 for Celta. Before we go, in the Segunda, Depor are top of the table after their 4-0 win against Huesca at Riazor. Are we going to see Depor back in Primera? Well,
I hope
early
so.
stages, but
really
we hope so.
Yeah.
We'll also want to see Cadiz back there as well. They're level with them on 14 points. They beat Malaga 1-0. Then it's Racing Santander who drew 2-2 at Cordoba. They're on 13 points. And Almeria beat Sporting Gijón 2-1. That's it for today's edition of TSFP. We're over at patreon.com/TSFP for the rest of the week. Q&A podcast, bonus podcast. The newsletter is going to be out as well for patrons very soon as well. So make sure you're signed up, patreon.com/TSFP. And if you're not, okay, that's fine. But make sure you're listening every Monday and every Friday. We're back on Friday with a free preview podcast looking ahead to Matchday 7 in La Liga EA Sports, because Matchday 6 is the midweek round of fixtures. We'll speak soon, amigos. Adios.
Cheerio.